Today, I want to touch on presence, right? And why that initial first impressions are so important, right? And not just for men, for anybody. And I'm going to touch on certain different layers. We're gonna start on the physical, right? And this is, for anyone watching, the first impression is important, right? It's not a determination of who you are, but I want to break down the psychology of how people perceive other people, right? Regardless of how advanced we think our society is, how we interpret each other, right? And how those things within interpersonal relationships can make or break how you're perceived, right? I'm going to touch on a sensitive subject for people, which is if you are overweight, right? And I'm not talking about you carrying on a couple of extra pounds. I'm saying that you're fucking overweight. You're fat, right? You're carrying a lot of extra weight, and why is this perceived as a negative, right? And let's dive a little bit off topic. You've got an entire movement which is slowly dying because the people who are starting the movement die with it, literally. And that's the body positivity movement, right? Which says that I'm obese and how dare my doctor tell me I must lose weight, right? Well, he's not telling you because he's not telling you because you can do what you want to do.
Well, you're unhealthy.
Right. He's telling you because he's a doctor and his job is to tell you if you're healthy or not.
Right.
And your weight is affecting your health.
Absolutely.
He's got, in the bigger scheme of things, he's got no investment in you doing it or not doing it. He's literally just giving you his expertise. Right. However, when this comes to society, okay, and you walk into a door, right, and we'll take two people. We'll take someone who's in shape. I'm not talking about a 300-pound bodybuilder, right, because that's the extreme. I'm talking about someone who's in shape, right? You can see their waist is small. They don't carry any extra belly fat. The shoulders are nice and wide. You can see they have a low body fat percentage. They look muscular, right? They walk into them. What happens is that the reason people fluctuate towards that, right? It doesn't mean that that's a good person, a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm not even diving into personality. I'm talking about that first impression when someone walks into a room. Why do people look at that and go, ooh? And why does it attract people? It attracts people because in order to look that way, you had to do a certain set of things. Looking that way, the certain set of things that you did would have to take work, discipline, and sacrifice.
You can't hit the gym 2 or 3 times a week and jump on a treadmill or elliptical and look fit, and that's the only thing that you do.
Yeah.
Like, there's way more that goes into it.
Right, and then over and above that, the gym is only 1 or 2 hours, maybe a day, of what that person's doing. The rest is how they control the rest of their day.
Yeah, specifically what you put in your mouth.
Right. Now, why is that important? Because it's a vetting card, right? You're walking into a room and immediately the people in the room go, muscular, in shape, low body fat. I want to speak to this person because they know that took work. They know that took sacrifice. They know that person is already putting the work without even speaking to them, without even engaging with them. You've already determined that this person has put in sacrifice, right? On the flip side, if someone walks into a room and they are grossly obese, I'm not talking about people that are carrying a couple of extra pounds, because generally in society, people carrying extra pounds, no one cares, right? I'm talking about someone that physically,
morbidly obese,
to a very, very large degree, shows that they are unhealthy, right? And why do people look at that and why do they judge? They judge because without even interpreting the thought process, right? Without even the knowing consciously why they're looking at it. In order to weigh 350 pounds of fat, you had to do a certain set of things, the same way that the guys who's in shape had to do a certain set of things. However, these are the flip side. These were things that meant that you couldn't self-control, you couldn't self-regulate. You have you have no concept of how people perceive you, and you will not take steps to interact that, right? That's not to say that you can't get back into shape. You also have all that ability. You can get into shape, but the guy who's in shape can get out of shape, right? But it automatically triggers a psychological response in human beings that determines, without that person having even spoken to you, a judgment which has nothing to do with them being good or bad, but immediately. And now let's break that down even further. How can you say they're wrong? You can't, right? And this is the part that people struggle with, because as much as I always say in this podcast, you are responsible for you. You are. No one can make you follow a nutrition plan, right? You can be the richest guy in the world, right? I had this conversation with people the other day. You can be the richest guy in the world. You can be a billionaire, right? And you can have all the money in the world, and you can buy every steroid. You can have the best chefs in the world preparing your food for you. They cannot make you eat it. They cannot design the meals for you, and they cannot do the workouts for you.
That's right.
You will have to still do the work. You still have to earn it.
Yep.
So it's the one thing that in society does draw people in, because it's not about how much you earn. We can all make money, and some people make a lot more money than others. But money doesn't necessarily always mean that you earned it, right? It could have been an inheritance. It could have been a trust fund. It could have been luck of the draw, which happens to people. But having to have a physique that is that people attract to, that's different.
I think, having money affords you the ability to hire conveniences that enable you to be more effective with the lifestyle that you're choosing for fitness and health. But in the end, you still have to do the work. Like you can fill your fridge with a meal prep service because you can afford to pay for that. But if they only sit there and you still go out to dinner and you didn't eat those meals because of
you're
whatever
still accountable
reason,
for it, right?
You can have money and you can buy convenience, but you still have to do the work.
And then on the flip side, right, when we look at obesity, specifically in the United States, right, unfortunately, we live in a country that is going through some changes now with, the Maha movement and, Mr. Kennedy just changing the way the food system works, which is great.
Long overdue.
However, on the flip side, it is true. It is cheaper to eat shitty food. It is. I'm not even going to sit here and try and say it's not. However, there are still choices to be made. Right, I remember when I had no money, right, and I still had a diet. I wasn't eating steak. I was eating the cheapest ground beef I could get. I was boiling it to get the fat out of it.
I mean, to be honest, right now, like, it's bothering me to pay the steak prices because steak is high.
Steak is expensive.
It's like, I think last night I was looking at it, it was like $15 a pound or something like that. I can't remember.
That's expensive, high, right? Man. So you look at this and you go, okay, so what am I going to do? And what you're going to do is you're going to find ways to do it. I've found ways to do it. I know hundreds of people who are close to me who found their ways of doing it. The point is you have the choice, and that impression that you give to people is a psychological impression that you don't really have control of. They don't either. Right, whether they're judgmental people or not, there is a judging mechanism inside our brains because that's how we're designed.
Well, and this is a little bit of a tangent that I think is a relevant point to make. I think a lot of people, and I live this firsthand, where let's say you're a corporate person or an entrepreneur that's just always busy in meetings and you're going place to place and you never take the time to focus on yourself. So you have this tendency to eat on the run, and you make bad choices, versus like, let's say you're making good money, we'll hire the meal prep service so that you're prepared and not making poor choices when you go out to the meeting or whatever you're going. And I think the whole idea is that, like, there's two types of people. If you're a person who's struggling with obesity and you never do anything to make a change towards, like, you got to plan ahead, I guess is ultimately what I'm trying to say here. Like, we're no different. Like, nobody's different. It's that we chose to do different. We chose to live a certain way. And what's in my head right now is how much we meal prep. Like, literally, I've said this many times on the podcast and the people that we help. There's always trays of meat ready to go in our house. There's chicken, ground beef, now it's ground turkey, there's steak, sliced up, all ready to go at all times. Always. Like, there's no excuse for me to not eat what I'm supposed to eat or eat on plan because I have it ready in advance, always.
Realistically, there's no excuse for anybody, right? It's evident even now we had this discussion with our group last week, and there's scientific evidence that you can go on a calorie controlled deficit diet, eating the shittiest foods that you can find, and you will still be healthier for it. However, from a knowledge standpoint, this is where I tend to find people have a disconnect with health, right? The amount of parents I've spoken to who come to me and go, my son, I want him to be muscular, and I want him to go to gym, and I want him to be the best he can be, right? And I say to them, okay, great, but he's going to have to eat. No, he eats a lot, right? And I'll go, okay, but what does he eat? Right? No, everything. Okay, everything's not good, right? When you think of it in these terms, right, and I'll put up a video for people to see, but when you think of from a nutrition standpoint, right, you could eat 4 donuts, 4 donuts, and you have consumed your entire day's calorie intake, whole day, right? Or you can take that same and you can break that up into 4 really healthy meals, right? Which will incorporate some carbs, some steak, whatever you really want, as long as they fit within that calorie count. What's the kicker, right? I can kill 4 donuts in 5 seconds, and then I'm done. And then I have to deal with the crash of sugar and being hungry later, and the worst effects of all the other processed aspects they put inside that food, which makes cravings even worse. Right. The point I'm making is, regardless of what you look like, right? Regardless of what you look like, it doesn't determine if you're a good human being or not. We're not saying that. What we are saying is, human beings by nature have pre-wired psychological conditions. We judge people without thinking we judge. You can be the most non-judgmental person on earth, right? And we try to be the most non-judgmental person, but at the same time, we have to be factual and we have to be honest. Honestly saying, if you take 2 types of people and you walk them into a room, and they've done these experiments, they've walked people who are morbidly obese or obese, they've walked them into a room, right? And then they walked another person into the room, which is a person who's in shape. And the reaction from the groups are very different because we have a pre-wired system that already kind of develops an entire story based on that one thing. Now, again, you could walk in, I know a lot of people who not necessarily overweight, but are bigger people, and they're wonderful human beings, right? They want to be healthy and in shape, but again, like I tell everybody, is you have to find your own path, right? Don't let anybody tell you must do. In the end of the day, you need to find what makes you happy, right? For sure. Happiness does not get filled, right, by a plate.
I actually have a really good story about first impressions. I'm going to try to be. I don't know if he'll ever actually watch the podcast, but there's a guy that I knew in an earlier period of my life. I try to protect it as much as I can. He was into the goth lifestyle. Oh, yeah. And he wore chains and makeup. I believe he wore makeup. And this is my memory of the story for what that's worth. Anyway, and this, I don't know if you remember, there was a period of time where like the big, huge pants were the thing, like the bottoms were like really big. And he had chains off of them, and they were ripped, and he was wearing all black, like the Misfit shirts or Slayer or something, to that effect. Well, we would go play, and he was a wonderful person. Yeah. Really nice guy, right? And then, myself and my other friend, we were all kind of a little group at a particular point in our lives that we were all together. So we knew him for who he was, right? But when he would wear those attires out, when we would go social settings, he got really shitty looks. Yeah. Constantly. Yeah. So I would say to him, I'm like, we dress normal, like, jeans and a t-shirt type dudes, right? And I would say to him, like, hey, how does that make you feel when people would stare at you or judge you or whatever? And he's like, it kind of sucks. And I said, well, listen, we live in, and this is still true. This was many years ago that this went down, but even today, more so, in my opinion, than it was back then. No matter how we want to say we've progressed as a culture, and no matter how much we want to believe that people don't judge the book by the cover, they do. They do. They do. So it's about how you dress. It's about how you are fit, whether you're obese, whether you're not. And we did a test with him, and I said, I wanted me and my friend are going to take you shopping. Yeah. We're going to buy you an outfit, and we're going to go out that night, and let's just see how people treat you. So we dressed him, typical, like, middle-aged dude attire, jeans, nice shirt, whatever. Yeah. Go out on the town. Everywhere he went, people called him sir, opened doors for him. Everything changed. Everything completely changed. And I said to him, like, halfway through the night, I'm like, dude, how does this make you feel? And he's like, it's pretty good. Yeah. Now, I don't know if he changed, we went separate ways not long after that and had different assignments. But it's the principle that no matter how much we want to say that the book is not judged by the cover, it is. And it 100%. Matters. And if you don't want to be treated like shit, respect yourself enough to worry about what's looking in the mirror.
Yeah, but there's nuance to that too, right? Because again, there was obviously something he followed, that he went for that goth style. That was a style that probably developed when he was in his youth and kind of developed around him. And if you're in that circle, right, if those are your people, that's fine. Like, again, find what makes you happy, right? And I can attest this to us. So we're business owners. We stay in Florida. What we're wearing now is pretty much we wear every day. It's a pair of sneakers, it's a pair of shorts, and it's a t-shirt.
That's who I am.
Because that's who I am. It's hot here, and I go back to a guy like Gary Vee. He always says, dress what you're comfortable with. Always be clean, be presentable, but dress for who you are.
Right.
And there's a lot to be said for that, because again, the idea that a certain way to dress, depending on where you're from, depending on which culture you're in, changes accordingly. Right. You go further up north where there's more extreme cultures. And people today, you walk around, and you see people with nose rings and all sorts of chains in their face, and no one bats an eyelid. My wife has earrings down her whole ear, and when she was
I've never actually noticed that.
Right, when she was 19, she was blaspheming for this. She's going to hell.
Yeah,
imagine that. We're talking like 20 years ago, and this was like the worst thing in the world.
Even tattoos, tattoos have really changed.
Tattoos has changed. I remember when I was a kid, if someone with the tattoos walked in, everyone's eyes kind of batted in. So culture changes, and the idea of how to accept people does change, right? I'm not really talking about that, because the cultural aspect can always be overcome. Right. Obviously, if you're going to go to the extremes, you're going to get an extreme reaction. It's just how things work. So I agree with you in a certain sense, right? I think you should always be you, but if you want to be accepted in certain cultures, you have to adapt to the culture, right? I'm an immigrant in North America. I didn't come here. I don't walk around speaking, one of my native languages in South Africa and expecting you to speak it. That's crazy, right? It's not an expectation. I have to adapt to your culture, right? I came here to be American. I didn't come here to make America another country. So you have to be adaptable to what you want out of the culture that you have chosen to integrate with.
Yeah.
So if you're a middle-aged guy, you're in business, right, and you are going out, you can. I mean, all for it. Be part of who you were. But if you're going to take it to the extreme, then you're going to have to expect extreme reactions.
Oh yeah.
And even in our circles, right, there's circles within. If we go into it, we'll be looked at weird for the way we dress, because in those circles, it's $5,000 pants, $10,000 shirts, Rolex watches, and that's fine. There's a place for that, and that's fine, right? But to the largest degree, be presentable, right? Try and look as good as possible. And when you walk into places, regardless of how you look, there's going to be judgment.
I do think it's important to be aware of where you're going, this is my daily attire.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go to a wedding like this.
No.
Right? I'm just using a wedding as a first thing that pops in my head.
Example, right? Again, dress according to what you want for, they always say dress according to the job you want, right?
Yeah.
Dress according to the event that you're going to. Dress according to what you're required to go to. If I'm going to take my wife out for dinner, I'm not going to do it in a pair of shorts.
To be honest, if I was to go into a corporate meeting nowadays, what I would honestly probably wear, I'd put a nice t-shirt on, a pair of jeans, and probably throw a jacket over.
Yeah.
Like a dressy jacket
But
type.
that's how the business culture has changed.
Yeah.
It's become less formal, and that's more acceptable.
But I came from a suit and tie world, right? But even then, if I was to go meet with people like that, the most I'm going to do now is that sport jacket with jeans and a nice t-shirt. Yeah. That's what I would wear.
Which is great.
Because it's more me.
But also that aspect of it is, if we were talking 10, 15 years ago, you might have just worn a suit.
I would have worn a suit tie.
And why is that? Because we have TikTok influencers who make $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Right. And they run around in the weirdest clothes. We have guys, billionaires like Gary Vee, who dresses as comfortable. We've got billionaires, the richest guy in the world, like Elon Musk, and he walks around most of the time in a t-shirt and a pair of jeans.
Yeah,
right. It's because the concept of what successful has changed culturally. Yeah. Success doesn't resonate necessarily with how you dress.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think we're kind of on the appearance aspect of first impressions, which, the way you dress has not necessarily been as much of a factor nowadays. And, but I totally resonate with what you're saying about the fitness component of it.
Yeah.
Because, again, like you and me, if let's just say in general, it doesn't even have to be you and me, but if we're going to do a business deal with another person that you see is obese, that let's call it a partnership.
Yeah.
Okay. If we're going to go into partnership with somebody, I want to know that when the shit hits the fan, are they going to roll their sleeves up and get to work?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, when you see someone who's morbidly obese, there's a question mark around whether or not you're dedicated and committed to the job and getting it done.
Because that impression is generally what comes in. And that's one of multiple layers, right, that come in. Is if you see someone, I'm just going to jot this off, as someone who has hired hundreds of people for positions, right, and been through this process, there's general things that you look for, right? So again, if someone walks in, if they're in shape, I mean, I can't think of the exact guy, but he he really does scream on the internet, on Instagram, and I'll come up with his name, but he says, I'll never hire a fat person, right? And I can't argue with his logic in one sense. However, I've hired people who are in shape as well, and turned out later that they're more interested in being in shape than actually working. So that, that there's a double-edged sword there.
Definitely.
But the point is, we're talking about that first impression, right? So when I hired someone and they sit in, what am I looking for? There's a factor of how do they look? Are they presentable? Right. Yes, if they were morbidly obese, right, I'd have a couple of questions, but obviously I wouldn't judge initially on that. I'd go through more aspects because people go through shit and that things like that could happen, right? But it is a factor, right? Then I'd see how presentable are they. How do you dress? It's not what you're dressed in. It's how you present in what you're dressed in. It's not necessarily, I don't expect a suit and tie. I've seen people look like slobs in suit and ties.
Right, me too.
I've also seen people walk in with a t-shirt and a pair of shorts that look amazing.
Yep.
How do you present in what you've chosen to wear? Right. Then it's a question of, do you look me in the eyes when you talk to me? How do you present yourself? Are you courteous? Right. Do you have manners?
This might sound weird. Maybe not. I think you would appreciate this, but like, it really makes a difference to me when I put my hand out to shake someone's hand, knowing that like I've got a strong hand.
Yeah.
Knowing that I've got a good handshake, that matters to me.
But those nuances are different for everybody. But in the same breath, as they're slightly different, they're all kind of the same, right? So the same thing for me is, how do you greet me? Do you shake my hand? Do you stand up when I walk in there? Do you show me the same respect I show you? There's so many different factors on that first impression. Yeah. Right now, again, when you sit down, do you slouch? Do your shoulders come forward? Do you sit back? Do you look up? Is your chin up? There's so many different nuances.
I've noticed that you do this too, because you and I have been in enough meetings together. But like, if I meet somebody for the first time, I always try to stand up.
Yes.
If I'm introduced to a person, I stand up, look them in the eye, and shake their hand.
Yeah. Because
to me, like, if I just stay seated, that's disrespecting that individual I'm meeting. Yes. I've noticed you do the same thing. Like,
and it's mutual respect. It's because I found is the more, if I want something from someone, right, or I'm looking to engage with someone, I have to show them the amount of respect that I expect for myself. Right. And there are certain aspects that kind of dictate this. So we're talking about those first impressions. But now let's layer that back. Then there's a psychological aspect to it, right? When you endue confidence, right, you carry yourself confidently, right, and you walk into a room, you feel that. When you watch someone, like you'd be sitting in meetings, and we have weekly meetings that we have with our business groups, and we do tons of meetings on a weekly basis with multiple levels of people, right? And you'd walk in, and there are certain, and I'll give this to business people. Most people, if they're an entrepreneur running a business, they have a sense of confidence that they carry with themselves, which I kind of find is kind of universal, because you've taken that step, right? You've put your ass on the line to put money down to be the only person responsible for your income. You have a level of confidence you're carrying with you. I don't care who you are, right? So all entrepreneurs, from what I've experienced, have that level of confidence. And what happens is, then there'll be levels in regards to how they conduct themselves, because people have personality traits, right? You can have an introvert, you can have an extrovert, you can have people who are highly energetic, people who are more reserved. There's changes in nuances of how people conduct themselves, right? Me personally, I'm an introvert by nature. I have to learn to overcome that in order to be in a group of people like that. But then I'd find is I'm more reserved in how I engage. I'd look in, and then what happens is I give people time to talk so that I can kind of get a read on them. And once I have a read on them, then we'll start engaging more, and we'll take it from there. But you have to find those mechanisms, but always understand that first impression, right? There's a reason they say first impressions last, right? It doesn't mean that if you make a bad first impression, you can't recover from it. Of course you can, right? It doesn't mean if you're one of those people and you've been down a journey and you've become obese, that's not the end of the world. put the effort in, right? And if you are putting the effort in, make that part of your personality, make that part of how you engage, right? None of that is a deal breaker, but it is easier to engage in the deal when you have that first set done.
Absolutely.
And being in shape, right? Carrying yourself with confidence, walking into a room, engaging people, being able to look in their eyes, right? Those things make a difference in how people see you.
Well, I also I think a big part of it, I agree with everything you said. A big part of it is the when you said confidence, to me, my brain went to how important it is in this sales process to have confidence.
Yeah.
And if I'm out of shape, I don't have confidence in myself. I lived this at one point in time where I didn't necessarily have confidence in myself and how I felt or appeared. So having a physical edge, if you will, allows me to walk into a like, I guess it's, sound body, sound mind.
It changes the level.
It changes how I perform in a sales process.
It helps. Like, listen, I can attest to both sides of the coin, right? There's been times in my life where from an and this is a very personal thing, right? Because I've seen people, okay, who are by certain people's accounts out of shape, right? But they exercise, but if you didn't know they did, you wouldn't care. But they know that know that they're confident in their physicality, they're confident in how they carry themselves. And they walk into a room and they are confident in how, right? You feel that energy walk in, right? In the same breath, I've been in positions where I didn't feel very good about myself, right? Physically. And it changed how confident I am. Because regardless of how we want to tell the world we see things, because oftentimes you'll people, I don't care what people think. Yes, you do. No, everyone does, right? That's just, it's human nature. If you want to be part of communities and you want to be part of a world that is very socially driven, because we're social beings by nature, right? I think you and me are on the same page as this. I'm one of these people, I can be alone for hours, for days, for weeks, and I'll be okay. But if I do that, I'm isolating myself. And at some point, right, I'm going to ask myself why no one wants to spend time with me. Yeah. Because you do need people. It's something that I've had to figure out as I've gotten older. That, people are important in your life.
They are, and I've been bad at that too. Where, like you had mentioned, being an introvert. I'm introverted by nature. It's my habitual. I don't know if that's the right word, but my instinctive thing is to just be like to myself.
Silo.
Yeah, I just have always, like, as a kid I was like that, and a boss that I worked for helped me break out of it a little bit, or at least showed me what it's like to be an extrovert. Me as I've evolved and grown, I catch myself at times not wanting to be social, not wanting to go do things, because it's convenient for me to just sit at home or do the things that I do. And it's not that I'm just sitting. I don't just sit at home. We're busy doing stuff all day.
You do things, but you're a homebody.
But clean up the yard, or clean the house, or meal prep, or do stuff with the kids, or we run to like yesterday or Saturday, we went to the outlet mall, and it was just us. Like, we just did that and back, and it's easy in a sense to not be social.
Listen, and we're speaking specifically to introverts, right? Again, I'll do a full episode where we break down personalities, right? I've had a lot of experience doing these personality exams. If we could, I'd love to get in a psychologist who can kind of help us break down those barriers. But just speaking from personal experience, I find social interactions exhausting, right? Totally. If it's not people I want to spend time with or I know, right?
Yeah, like, my interactions with you are never exhausting. Yeah. You're my friend. We're good friends. I enjoy my time with you. Yeah. That's why we spend a lot of time with each other.
Exactly.
But everybody else, I can't say the same thing.
And in the same breath, right, there's levels with people I spend a lot of time with. So when I'm saying this there's, as I said, we have a business group. I don't find the business group exhausting. I find it invigorating, because now I am comfortable with the people in there. Same. I know them. I kind of know all of them. I
see them as friends now.
That's it, right? So I've kind of created a social aspect to them. But in order to break, as an introvert, what happens is you find social interactions awkward. I do. Right?
Yeah, me too.
it's that awkwardness, feels uncomfortable, and I generally don't like it, and I want to avoid it. But I've had to learn to overcome that feeling, because it's not a good thing to be. Because, as we've always said, is if you want to grow, you have to do things that are uncomfortable.
That's right.
That's life. So,
and honestly, it's not that I don't like other people; it's that I don't like that awkward or uncomfortable feeling that I don't know of people.
No, I can say I don't like other people, and I'm not saying this loosely. I'm saying this in a very. I'll explain what I mean. Right. So, what happens is, again, that's me being an introvert, but that's also me protecting my energy, because introverted nature means that you are very much in tune with other people's emotions and other people's emotional states. Also, you have a bullshit meter that goes through the roof. So what happens is, when I meet people, that is generally why I'm generally reserved. So when I meet someone, I'm reserved, right? I'll sit, I listen, I try and engage, and then I'll slowly start getting into conversation, because I'm trying to read people, right? I like to say my introverted nature is I've got a very short fuse for bullshit, right? If your energy doesn't match, right, and by all accounts is, I don't care what your background is, where you come from, how old you are, male, female, means no difference to me. It's the energy that I'm looking for, right? If your energy is pure, right, it's the only way I can explain it. If I feel that your energy is pure, you're not there trying to extort me, you're not trying to sell me something, right? Whether you sell me something or not, I don't care, right? If you have something that I'm interested in, you're going to sell it to me, right? But it's how you treat me as a human being, and are you genuinely sharing energy with me as a person for mutual benefit, not for your own benefit. Because the minute that is just, I want to get something from you, I shut down, right?
Taker energy.
Right, a taker energy. Me and my wife have a big joke. There's this show, right, that they started in New Zealand, and then eventually I'll come on the name now, but basically it's a bunch of vampires, right? They live in a house, and they live in a house in New York, right? And there's a vampire in there, he's an energy vampire. Okay. He's a tax accountant. Okay. Right, and his job is to suck the energy out of everybody by just being boring. Interesting. Right. So, and it's a comedy show, and it's super funny. Okay. Because we kind of like, what we're trying to avoid in our life is energy vampires. Yeah. I don't want to I don't want to engage with people that all they're trying to do is take energy from me, and they're not sharing. There's got to be this mutual exchange of energy.
We have somebody that we both know that we've referred to as the person with the black cloud over their head always. Yeah. And I don't ever want to be known as that person. No, like I don't want to bring, like,
and those and the thing is, they're not bad people, right? It's we've said this before in episodes, right? This isn't a good bad thing, but you're gonna have thousands of social contracts. You have social contracts with your parents, your family, your wife, your kids, everybody gets a social contract. My social contract is based on mutual respect, right? Mutual respect, mutual energy exchange. Yeah. I will give, but I also expect, and I don't expect equal, but I expect that there has to be an exchange of energy. It can't just be take. For sure. And then it also has to be based on boundaries, right? Respecting my boundaries, respecting your boundaries, and then getting to a relationship point where we can actually have deep conversations. I don't want to talk about one thing. I want to talk about everything, and I want to be able to have these conversations. If you have a political opinion that is so bad that if my opinion is so offensive to you that the pure idea of me saying it offends you so badly that you hate me, we can't have a relationship. It's not going to work. I agree. I don't care what your belief system is. In fact, I'd love to hear about it, but you need to be respectful enough to understand that just because you think that yours is the only way, right? And if you do believe that, we cannot have a conversation, because there are so many mutual levels of nuance when it comes to human beings. Definitely. That you have to look at the world, and you have to be able to, I can engage with someone who believes the world is flat. Yeah. I can't prove him wrong. I don't care to prove him wrong, but I'd love to hear how he engages. Give me your perspective. Why do I want to hear his perspective? Because it's interesting, and because that shows a mutual respect of understanding of listening to someone else, regardless whether I agree with you or not, taking the good points and going, and even if I don't agree with you, going, that's a super interesting perspective.
This is a little, I don't remember if it was a podcast that I was listening to or if I read this on a social post, but like when it comes to our spouses, like especially as a man, when I come home, if the first thing out of my mouth isn't a question, then I'm doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. Basically, inquiring, like this kind of goes on top of what you're saying of, you may have a different opinion of something,
yes,
but I want to hear about it.
Yes.
I want to learn about it. Help me understand it. And that's something I didn't carry for a long time. I had to learn this. But like even with my spouse, when I go home, my first thing out of my mouth should be, hey, how was your day?
Yeah.
Not, unload on my day or everything about me. It should be about them. Hey, tell me about what happened. Tell me about you or whatever the story.
You've got to garner an interest in everybody that you want to engage with around you, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it be the homeless guy on the corner or whether it be your wife at home, mm-hmm. you have to try and gauge interest in everything and without judgment. And again, we spoke about the fact that there are predetermined ways that human beings engage and will judge certain mm-hmm. interactions. However, that doesn't override the fact that we are sentient beings.
Yeah.
Someone can walk in here and they can weigh 500 pounds, right? And yes, when they walk through the door, I am going to have a reaction. Mm-hmm. That reaction is going to be at the base of the fact that, oh my God, this person's 500 pounds. Mm-hmm. Right. Then they're going to sit down and we're going to start talking to them. And then I'm going to override whatever judgment I had to try and get to understand this human being.
Right.
What we're talking about is the first impression. Right.
Yeah.
And then we're going to a little bit of a nuanced discussion about around that and how you engage with energy.
Right.
And I might sit there and speak to this person who weighs 500 pounds and I want to know, tell me about you.
Yeah.
What's your day like? I don't care that you're 500 pounds. It's not my problem. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds cold. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You are the one who's responsible for carrying your big ass around. I didn't do that, right? You did it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not open to having a discussion with you and finding out who are you.
I can still treat you with respect and be kind.
100%.
And if you open the door and say, hey, can you help me with food or whatever, I'm going to.
And even if there's no help and you sit there, I've got a great Facebook friend, Ken. Right, Ken. If you're listening to this, awesome guy. Never met him, right? But the sweetest human being, right? Texts me, sends me messages way more than I reply because I don't get on Facebook text much, but is always interested in how you're doing, right? And I remember him saying he loves engaging with me because the type of person I am that a person like me weight trains, looks like I look, right? He doesn't weight train, but everybody who speaks to him is in shape wants to get him into shape, right? And he said, I appreciate the fact that you're not trying to. Well, that's you. If you ever need help, ask. If you don't need help, that's awesome. That's do you.
Right.
You are responsible for you.
Right.
You are a good human being. And I'm engaging with you because, you know what, you're a good guy.
Well, it's just being kind and being a human being.
Yeah. So, I don't have to tell you what to do or how to do. If you ask, I'm very willing to engage with you. But in the biggest scheme of things, I just want to find out who you are.
Right.
And this is what we need more of in society. Because when we're talking about impressions, yes, there's always going to be that first impression, right? My entire adult life has been the impression that the amount of people that thought I was stupid because I'm big. Well, he's a bodybuilder, he's a jock, he's done. And they sit down and go, and you know how many people that I've had these conversations with, and they go, wow, you're really smart. You're so smart. And I was like, wow, okay.
Thanks.
But I don't take offense to it because human beings are wired that way, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's getting past those nuances, and then, like I said, there's so many different levels.
I feel like sometimes people, it's maybe not as bad as it used to be, but people label athletes as a dumb jock, if you will. And the reality is we're all pretty smart people because we gotta learn our crafts or learn playbooks or moves or whatever you gotta.
It's the same thing as labeling a fat person as lazy, right? Lazy is nuanced. It's the same as labeling a person who's in shape as someone who's disciplined. I've said this before. You could be when you're in shape, right? You may be someone who has a really good. You locked into fitness early. And you found it to be something that is engaging and passionate. Now, here's the thing. If people who are in shape and look good, right, are so goddamn disciplined, why are most of them poor as shit? Right? That's all they focus on. They're so engaged in the discipline of training every day and eating well, but they haven't applied that same discipline mindset in one thing to anything else that they've done.
Yeah, and that's our big approach, is the multifaceted abilities. But I would pose this question, and I think we both agree with this. But would you say that athletes are disciplined?
Okay, so here's the trick. I'm gonna answer this question with a question because I actually read about this a couple of days ago and I was finding it super interesting. Okay, So, how many NBA athletes, right, retain their wealth?
None of them.
2%.
Yeah, I mean...
Right, now just think of that number, right? We're talking about thousands of guys,
yeah,
right, who out of college degrees, super athletes, right? Super disciplined in their field, right? These are guys who will go and shoot 2,000 shots at a hoop a day, right? Disciplined in basketball.
Right.
But all of them are broke. Why? Because the discipline that came with basketball was easier to apply than that's comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it was, which is like my argument, I guess, if you will, is that I think the athletes, even military people, have aspects of discipline.
Yes.
There's certain things that they're very good at, and I like the word comfortable around what they're doing, because they're comfortable being disciplined in going to shoot hoops, right? But when it comes to other things, and that's where I think with us, like we talk mind, body, spirit, and abundance a lot, even somebody who's obese, like they could be hardworking people. They a lot of them are, right, in their professions or whatever they do. So that's what's caused them to stay away from actually...
Because the discipline in fitness and health for them is difficult, right?
Well, my fitness struggle was around the food. For me, the longest time, there was two problems I had. When I was in the corporate world, the two problems that I had was I was a picky eater, and so I struggled with the food. But then the other part of it was legitimately, when did I train? When could I train because of just my vicious schedule?
Yeah.
That some of that's excused, but like the reality was I was a new father with small young kids, and I just let my environment dictate my excuses, you know.
And I think that's a great way to put it, because it kind of snowballs for everybody, right?
It really does.
You know, when we're talking about someone who's obese, and you know, you don't have to weigh 500 pounds. We can say someone who is out of shape to the point that you
even 50 pounds
that you
overweight.
feel that your body is just heavy and it's just dragging it, right? And that person may be one of the most disciplined people in the world when it comes to running their budget every month. They may be the most disciplined person in the world when it comes to running their relationship every month. It may be someone who's so in tune with emotions and empathy for other people that they drag it, and they're so disciplined in going because they're naturally inclined to it. So I feel athletes are naturally inclined to athletic endeavors.
Yeah.
Those endeavors come easier than it does to someone who is not genetically inclined to athletic ability.
I had a coach that I paid for in business last year, 2 years ago, that opened my eyes up to the idea that this is relevant, right? Military and athletes oftentimes think they can be successful in entrepreneurship because they think they're disciplined because of their sports or their military careers, right? But the reality is, why a lot of athletes, I think, struggle with maintaining their health and wellness afterwards is because they don't have that coach standing over them anymore telling them what to do.
They're not... Discipline is doing something you don't necessarily want to do or have to do, but choose to do even if you don't have to.
Right.
It's like, you know, if I get signed for the NBA, I want to play in the NBA, right? I'm going to play in the NFL, whatever. I get signed for the WWE. In order to do that, I'm going to have people screaming at me because I'm responsible to a contract. I'm responsible to a team. There's a contract, right? So I'm responsible.
There's accountability.
I signed a contract before I joined the military, and now I'm going to have all these people who are going to scream at me and tell me, okay, you're going to go do this, and this. And yes, there is benefit in what you've learned through that process. However, what we always talk about with the Layman's Lab is we're trying to find balance, right? And trying to... I'm constantly finding myself, and this was an evolution in my mindset. I'm constantly trying to find myself in positions that are uncomfortable, because I've learned that when I'm uncomfortable, I learn, I develop, I grow.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've almost developed a mindset that I'm looking for something to make me uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right. If we go and do a workout, I'm looking for that edge in the workout of something to do, throwing an extra 2 plates on and pushing something, knowing that I might fail.
Right.
Almost guaranteed that I may not be able to do it. To push myself to a level that I've never been to before.
Yep.
I try and find myself in the work that I'm doing of taking on challenges that are out of my scope, knowing that I can do them, but they're going to take time, effort, and work. And I'm going to be uncomfortable. And I'm almost in a position where I'm I'm trying to grab them consistently because I know that if I grab it, I grow.
Yeah.
Right. I read more books now than I've ever in my entire life.
Nice.
And not books that I'm necessarily interested in. Books that have context that can teach me.
Yeah.
Because it's not comfortable reading those books, so I'm uncomfortable. So I have to learn to kind of engage that information.
Yeah.
Listening to podcasts, not of the things I want to learn more about, sometimes listening about things that maybe I don't understand enough about and I've read away to try and get more insight.
One thing I'll say about reading books, like not on your phone, not on a Kindle, but actual physical books.
Yeah.
I personally think that pushes you, and this isn't really related to fitness, it's just related to growth, but like to me, reading actual books pushes your mind better than anything in terms of education.
Yeah.
Like, because like it's also helping improve your vocabulary.
Agreed.
It's teaching you things. That's expanding your vocabulary. For me, what I have gotten the most growth over the past few years, honestly, has come from books.
Yeah.
In terms of like education, in terms of advancing educationally.
Yeah.
To me, a physical book, reading that, and not just picking up a novel that's like, whatever bullshit that's out there, but like actually self-help stuff, like things that are actually good. Like I've read a lot of marriage, on relationships, on finances, on business, on entrepreneurship. I don't read any leadership. Honestly, I don't really read a lot of leadership or business books anymore because I'm just kind of bored with that topic at the moment. But
which is fine. I mean, and I'll tell you, I'm the opposite in this line because I don't get as much from reading books in that way. Right. So I've read a lot of books. I try and read as much as I possibly can, but I find I engage more and I get more in when I listen, right? And again, find the mechanism that works for you, right? And when I listen, I have to almost be more concentrated on what I'm doing because it's easy to listen to something and get something else, right? I also find now because you have this wonderful thing called AI, right? On Grok, so the new Grok apps come out, Grok 3, and there's an option on there where you have voice, right? So what I tend to try and do now is I'll click on the voice, I'll drive, and I'll start asking questions, and I'll start digging and researching, right? Because I'll ask a question, and I'll start digging the research, I readapt the research, it brings it back. Now I'm finding insightful information into multiple topics that are happening, and it could be something as simple as, tell me what the Iran-Israeli conflict is really about, what's currently happening, how is it laid out, what's the history of it, where did it come from, what are the two different opposing views, right? Who jumped first, who jumped last, like it just gives me insight. So we have so much access to information now that it's less uncomfortable to absorb information than it's ever been in human history.
Right.
And I'm finding, how does this tie in, right? Because the more that you find balance, right, and this is what we're tying into, is we started with talking about the very primal instinct we have on looking at certain aspects of human beings and having a judgment to them, whether it's conscious or not. We all have it, right? And then saying, okay, despite that, we then look at the balance around that. Because, again, if you are the person, right, and I'm talking to that person, if you are the person who is 50 pounds overweight or overweight and you don't feel good about yourself, but you're nailing it in every other aspect, right? And you're nailing it because those things come a little bit easier. It's easier for you to engage and, adapt your spirituality. It's easier for you to have your mindset lock into certain things that don't involve food. And I'm being honest, that they don't involve food. They might involve, learning new subjects or locking in. You may be someone who's inclined, you might be a professor sitting at a university and you're locking in because you're really good at physics. Right. Great. However, as someone who, found, and I didn't start as an athlete, right? We spoke about this last week. I was a skinny kid. I struggled to pack on muscle. I had to do some extreme goddamn things to get where I got, right? I worked my ass off to build that. I was a small nerdish kid who loved reading, sat in the library reading books about mythology and the Roman Empire and the Greek gods. That's things that I found interesting, and those came easy. I had to really develop physicality to find my place in it, right? Because I wanted to find a balance, even though back then I didn't realize it. So what I'm saying is, if you are the athlete that thinks because I'm an athlete, I'm disciplined and I can go start a business, you need to start tapping into those things you don't like, because a business is, let's say you're an athlete and you go, well, I'm going to train people. Great. That's a great idea. 99% of a business is doing the things that have nothing to do with how you run the business.
I know.
99% of running a business has got to do with doing accounts, getting clients, doing cold calls, doing all the shit you don't like to do in order to get to that one little part of that business you do like to do.
Yep.
Right? That's what business is.
Yep.
So regardless of whether you're on this extreme being an athlete who's super in shape, or on this end of the spectrum where you're someone who might be a little bit overweight but super disciplined in other aspects of life, find the balance.
Yeah.
Right? And why is that important? Because I will guarantee you, your first impressions to people will dramatically change if you're balanced, right? If you're balanced, right? If you're a person who's overweight, it's not about walking into a room and lifting your shit up and showing a six-pack.
Yeah.
It's about having the confidence knowing that you bust your ass every single day to be the best physical version you can be.
That's right.
Not me, not you, not everyone else. You.
Yeah.
What is the best version of you? The best version of you might be someone who's a little bit chunky, who doesn't maybe fit the mold, but you know what? You feel good and you do the work.
Right.
And then on top of that, you meditate and you find that spirituality and you have faith and you find that guidance in life, that there's more to this world than just the life we live, and there's more to us.
You know, and I think about my own journey of the past couple of years, like, recently having some conversation with someone that we're helping about, it's not just one thing. Like, for example, the TRT thing came up, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not the only thing that got me to where I am today. It's a part of it.
It's just one step.
Yeah. Or like, the fitness side of it, like going into the gym to lift weights, that's not the entire part of it. It's just, it's a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it, right? What I put in my mouth, it's a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it.
Getting up every morning, taking affirmations, being grateful for the fact that you woke up today.
Reading, having gratitude, deep work on my brain, seeking help, hypnosis therapy, actual therapist, or not actual therapist, but a separate therapist.
Yes.
Like, being inquisitive, wondering, why did I act this way? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? Listening to podcasts, talking to you, building a community. It's all encompassing.
Yes.
And so when we sit here and we talk about it, fitness aspect of it, to me, it all starts with fitness, though.
Yeah.
And it all starts with your body as your resume.
And I agree with you to the largest term. Is I think, especially for men, right? Because men are designed to be the more physical of the two sexes. Because men are designed to be the protectors. Because men are designed to be the providers. Because men are designed to go out and do all the hard shit that no one else is going to do except us. Right? That's okay. And getting back to that physicality and how you conduct your day changes how you see yourself. And I'll attest to it. I've had people that I've helped that had no physical prowess, and by no accounts, they're not breaking any records. We're not talking about people that all of a sudden he's not going to compete in the Mr. Olympia next week. He's not even going to do a bodybuilding contest. But you know what? For the first time in his life, he feels capable. For the first time, he feels like he is taking steps in his health and how he is physically and how he sees himself. Yeah. That changes how you present.
Well, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, nobody's gotten mad about being fit.
No.
No spouse has ever looked at their significant other and been upset with that person because they went and got themselves in shape.
Listen, I've seen these interesting videos coming up, and there's a couple of them. It would be these people that are kind of shitting on anybody who is trying to improve themselves. And they say the word bodybuilder, but it applies to anybody who's building on their physicality, right? And the one was a woman who had this rant and said, no one cares if you're building your body day to day in the gym. No woman gives a shit. Okay, listen, I'm married. I've been married for 15 years. I'm not trying to impress any fucking other woman. Right. I'm not even trying to impress my wife. My wife cares as long as I'm putting in effort. Right. If for whatever reason I was paralyzed tomorrow and I'm still fucking busting my fucking ass as hard as I can to be the best version of myself, my wife's gonna love me. Yeah. Right. If I give up, she's gonna give up on me. Yeah. If she gives up, I'm gonna give up on her.
That's a good point.
I am trying to be the best version of myself. That is what counts. Right now, does my wife appreciate the fact that I look after myself? Fuck yeah, she does. Yeah. Right. So anybody out there who's gonna go, oh, women like a dad bod. No. What happens is They accept the dad bod, right? And they accept the idea of that, but they want good shape. And here's the thing: is there's different levels of shape, right? we're not saying that every woman wants a guy who's 2% body fat, right? Because once you get under a certain percent body fat, it's pretty gross. It is. Men or women. Once you get under a certain percentage of body fat, you look like someone without skin. That's not pretty either, right? Yeah. But women like a guy who's generally in shape. There's a psychological primal aspect to it, right? I agree. And when it comes to those marriages, what that specific person was saying is, like, okay, so why do you go to the gym every day? Because I fucking love it. That's why I bust my ass every day, because I love it. I love the way it makes me feel. I love my psychological state. I love being capable. I love sweating. I love having brothers around me that we fucking throw weights to. That's why I do it every fucking day. Yeah. Right? It's got nothing to do with impressing anyone else. I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it. You're sitting there shitting on people, going to the gym and going, no one cares. I don't give a shit if they care. We could be in an apocalypse, and if there's a gym, I'm still going to be benching every fucking Monday.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like to the people that will say, nobody cares. Well, what I care about actually is
I care.
Well, I care about other people finding what I found.
Yes.
That's why that's why we started this podcast, right? Because I'm thinking of someone in the hospital, to my knowledge, is still in the hospital fighting for his life.
Yeah.
Over an alcohol problem. And to me, imagine if he would have listened about health and wellness. How much different the life could be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it's like, for me, I care more about, like, yes, I care about me and my health and well-being, but I also take pride in sharing my story.
Yes.
Because of what I've been through, to say to others, like I fell off the train for a while based on my environment, but I got back on, and now my life is thriving. It's flourishing. It's heading in a direction that who knows how great it's going to go.
Let me put this into a different direction. Okay, so someone's in the hospital and they're fighting for their life because of alcoholism. Okay, here's the thing, right? Is, as I've said before, I can be the fittest, healthiest, most capable person on earth. I can walk out this door and get hit by a meteorite. Yeah, dead. Okay, I'm not doing it because I'm trying to live, and they shouldn't have done it to try and extend life, because the same thing could have happened in a different way. However, how many years did you lose?
Oh yeah,
because you were going down a path that didn't let you feel the best in the present.
Yeah.
As we always say, it's not about the past, it's not about the future, it's about being in the right now. How much time did you lose when you didn't try and be your best self? Because when you fall into the traps, right, of addiction, the traps, and addiction is not just alcoholism, it's not just cigarettes, it's anything.
I was going to say, even just like a single parent attempting to get back into the dating scene, getting so far wrapped into dating again to try to, quote, find your forever person, and then neglecting the time that you have with your child.
Yes.
That's the same concept.
Because what happens is, humans, other than the fact that when we want something, we become hyper-focused, what happens is, generally, the universe, and this is just my take on it, and this is something that my wife Eileen talks about in her therapy sessions. When you put out into the universe, let's talk about money, right? When you put out in the universe that you have a lack of money, right? There's no money. I never have money. You never will. Okay. So let's start with that analogy. The world, I'm saying to the world is, I don't have enough money, and I never will have enough money, and there's not enough money, and I don't have. So basically, I've got a lack mindset on money.
Let's not even say money. Bad shit always happens to me.
Yeah, but let's focus on money first, and then we're going to work onto the relationship side. So now I'm putting out into the universe. My energy says I have a lack mindset when it comes to money. When you have a lack mindset of money, you can have $1 billion, you'll never have enough money because you have a lack mindset. When you change and you switch the modality of your mindset, and you go, you know what? I'm good. Money will come. I'm going to be in the present. Yep. I'm going to do everything I need to build what I need. And if that comes, that comes. But when it comes, I'm going to have faith. I'm going to have a good mindset. I'm going to put in the effort in the present. And you know what? Whatever happens, I'm just going to make sure that whatever I do is to get whatever I can with the best effort I can put forward. Whatever that effort is. And I guarantee you money will come. And then abundance comes, and abundance got nothing to do with money. And now all of a sudden, money doesn't matter. Now, relationships. If I live on a day-to-day basis, and I'm constantly going, I'm lonely and there's no one in the world for me and nothing's coming to it. It's never going to. When I start living my day-to-day to be the best version of myself in the present, your energy will attract the right person.
Absolutely.
Without you realizing the amount of people I have spoken to who were not looking for that right person, were just kind of putting themselves out in the world and whatever happened, and then all of a sudden found their spouse. That's how I found my spouse. I was looking. Right? That's how she found me. And then everybody I've spoken to generally goes, nope, it just happened. Because what I was doing is I was just living my life, being the best version of myself, trying to be the best I could be. And I put out the right energy, and the right energy found me.
Yes.
That's what you should be doing. So in this person's particular case that we're talking about, is what you're doing is you're putting out a lack mindset. I'm lonely. I don't have anyone in my life. No one's ever going to be in my life. I'm not good enough. While you're doing this and moaning about your life, you're neglecting the actual abundance you currently have. In this particular case, it may be your kids.
That's right.
When you stop worrying about a relationship and start just living and being the best version of yourself, if that's in your cards, it's coming.
But that also falls into the categories that you've mentioned about, like, I can't remember exactly how you say it, but the fear of the future, right? Like, you're sitting here, you're worried about things that aren't even here, right? So if I focus and dwell on today and being the best version of myself, you know, and if I am that, quote, single parent, like, well, if I can't control what happens to me, I can't control who I meet, but I can control my day-to-day actions and just being the best genuine person I can be.
The thing is, it becomes a super complicated system when you add emotions, especially when loneliness is kicked in. And it's the same thing as when you don't have money. It's very difficult not to focus on money, right? And I get that, and and at no point am I saying that you're not going to have those feelings. However, let's flip this a different way, right? If I'm looking for the right person in my life, okay, the person I want, and the person I want is I want good energy, I want positivity. It's all the good things you want from a relationship. But in looking for that, what I'm doing, what the energy I'm exuding to the world is, I'm lonely, I'm never going to be good enough, I can't find the right person, I'm going to flip through whatever app I can to find as many people I can. I'm in panic mode. I'm trying to find them. No one's coming back to me. What's going to happen? The person who is going to come back to you is going to have the same energy as you. What energy are you putting out in the universe in that moment, in that present? Because you're not being your best version of yourself. You're being a person, as you said, panicking about the future, over-analyzing the past, really freaking out about where I'm going. So you're creating this anxiety around what you're doing. And what happens is when you put that energy out, that's the energy you're going to receive.
Yeah, and I lived this to a certain degree. Like, I was briefly share it, like in my personal life, in my marriage, where when things like shit hit the fan, in my mind, I had to fix it right away, right? So I'm worried about what's going to be in the future. I was worried about what all I did to get me where I was today, and I was like beating myself up, like, why did I do this? Why did I say that? Why did I act this way? Why did I do these things? Okay, can I fix this? And I was so caught up in, well, shit, how do I fix all this, right? And what I decided was, like, well, in the end, like, I can only be the best version of me each and every day, and I can show up every day, right? And whatever happens. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
And that's controlling what you can, and letting go of what you can't.
Yeah, and I don't. It sounds bad to say this, but I basically got to a place in my head where I said, well, I don't give a shit what happens. I care, but I don't. Right? I'm not tied to what happens.
You're not.
So if
it's
for some reason, it's the outcome, right? So if the outcome doesn't happen how I want it to be, I made a conscious decision to finally say,
I'm good with it.
Free yourself of that.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
And I've vocalized it.
Yeah.
I've actually said it to her.
Because when you don't do that and you don't focus on, because when you this is living in the future that doesn't exist, right? When you so overly focus on an outcome, right, that hasn't happened, is not in the present, doesn't exist. What happens is I'm so focused on it. I'm so independently focused on it. Imagine what happens to you when that doesn't happen, because you can't control it. You're trying to control an aspect of life that is uncontrollable, right? You can't control how the day. You can only control what you can do. So now I've created this precedent. I've created this future that doesn't exist, and I'm so overly focused on it. Now, what do you think happens to your psychological state when it doesn't happen? You break apart.
You break apart.
This is why you live in the present.
You have to.
You have to.
And then I became grateful for moments that I had. More so than I ever could have.
And then the grateful is a very important part, is because a lot of times if we're so over-analyzing the life we want that doesn't exist, we forget the life we have that is amazing.
Yeah.
And that is what we should be focusing on.
Literally.
So you have a life that is amazing. You may not think it's amazing, but I can guarantee you there's people out there which would die for your life.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially have good things in your life. And if you're currently in the present and you're so focused on where I am, though the good things will come.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. And this ties back in to once you have balance, right, and you're in the present. Now, I'm going to give a scenario, right? You walk
Can I just say really quick before your scenario, like, if I didn't do what I've done with fitness, though, in health, like what I put my mouth, what my supplements are, my food, all that, and the fitness side of it, I don't know that I would have ever opened up this door. I think that's the key ingredient.
I agree with you. And I think for men, 100%, physicality is the one thing that we lose very quickly because we become comfortable in life. Once you become comfortable, you make good money, life's comfortable, you're used to your environment, you're used to what your surroundings, everything's comfortable. Once everything's comfortable, it's easier to go, it's okay, I'll go next week, I'll go tomorrow. Life works this way, right?
Yeah, like nothing in my life right now needs immediate attention. It's fine. I'll get there when I get there. But what I have learned is if I have to, like, just for me personally, I don't know if you're this way, but I think you are. If I am constantly living in a state of, I'm always on my A game.
Yeah.
I always have to be on top, right? With my dealings in relationship, at home, with my kids. Like, to me, I focus every day on the sprint. Today's sprint is the only one that matters.
Yeah. Because you're living in the present.
And I can be the best sprinter that I can possibly be. That's all I care about.
Because you're living in the moment. Right. So how this ties back to those first impressions, right, is imagine the scenario, right? Whether you're the athlete, right, that's walking and you're in super good shape, yes, your first impressions are going to be great. Right. But you're going to have diminishing returns on that first impression when people get to know that you're only, again, 100% motivated in that aspect of your life and you lack in everything else. There's no balance. Right. The same thing goes for that person who walks in. You could have a person who's obese, right, and 50 pounds, 100 pounds away, it doesn't matter. And they walk into a room. But what they found is they found balance. I'm working on myself. I'm going to the gym. I'm trying to be better. Right. I haven't gotten where I want. I'm not where I want to be. Neither are you. I'm never going to be. The goalpost doesn't exist, right? Because it's a lifestyle. But now you found that, and you walk and you carry that confidence. Yeah, you might get a couple of first impressions. I get first impressions because I'm a big muscular guy, so people might judge me on that. But then what happens is I sit down, we have a conversation, and then my balance kicks in. If you're the obese person, you have that balance. You're a step above everybody else. But in order to get that, you need balance, which means go do the things that are uncomfortable. Right. Don't do them in lieu of everything else, because I've also found there's people who want to get into shape and they get so overly focused that what happens is I'm so ready to get in shape that you lose faith, you lose the mentality aspect, and you lose the abundance aspect because you're so overly focused here. Take it from someone who has spent hundreds of thousands of hours in the gym, right? It will never, ever override the other parts of my life because the other parts are equally important. This shows more. I'm not going to argue with that. It shows more.
I'll use this table as the example because I don't know a better term, but it has 4 legs, right? And if you took a leg off the chair,
it's unstable.
It's unstable, right? But I feel like what people have a tendency to do, and I was guilty of this at a point in time, is I would put all my attention on fixing the broken stool, the broken leg of the chair or the stool, whatever you want to say. And then the other 3 get neglected. And I make the best one leg I got, but it's like over fortified and whatever else, but the other 3 can't support the actual weight.
It's a constant jump.
It's about having a balanced chair. Right?
And here's the thing with balance, right? And imagine this, if I can give an analogy similar to what you do with the table, is imagine this table is consistently, the legs are always changing structure. So one's longer, one's shorter, but it's balanced, right? So it's upright. It's holding a glass. That glass is your abundance. That glass is your physicality. All those things, right? And you're trying to keep that glass from falling and spilling. And what happens is the legs of these tables are consistently growing, getting shorter. They're weakening. They're strengthening, right? Your job is to jump between. It's never ending. It's sometimes your spirituality will take a dip back and you have to put more effort into that. Sometimes your physicality is going to take a step back. And sometimes you have to let it take a step back so you can focus on other, but you don't let it go. I'm not saying you drop the ball. I'm saying sometimes you can't go to gym 7 days a week, so you're going to go 3 days a week and you're just going to do the best you can so that you can focus on the other parts of your life. What happens is balance isn't, well, everything's balanced, now we stop. It never stops. Balance is this. It's consistently moving. It's consistently changing because life is going to throw you with a curveball. And life is going to throw you with this, and it's going to throw you with that, and relationships change, and your day-to-day change, the country changes, things change. So what happens is balance is this constant weighing structure where you have to be willing to move with that flow. And sometimes I have to jump here, and sometimes I have to jump back, and sometimes I have to let go of this a little bit and move there. I'm very focused on our workouts, right? And I'll give my analogy. The last 2-3 weeks we've been moving, right? We spent 10 days in an Airbnb waiting for our house to close. We closed off on a rental property that we finished our rental on. We got out of the property. Now what happens is, in that time, did I train the same amount that I would when I was living in a house? No. Did I train? Absolutely. Did I eat the exact same way that I would on a strict, perfect diet? No, I didn't. I fluctuated because I had to, because I had other things that I did. But what I didn't do is I didn't let it go. I didn't go, I didn't at one point go, well, I'm moving, so now I'm going to stop doing everything else and just focus on this, because if I do that, the balance breaks down. I have to still find balance in what I'm doing because I've got a change happening in my life.
Well, and let's just use everyday life. Not even like yours was a good example of real interruption. Well, let's use business in general, family, right? Like kids.
Just day to day.
Like day to day life, you have all kinds of reasons to not go.
It's we live in Florida, so we have hurricane days, storm days, right? So you have a storm day, all of a sudden the kids have to stay at home. Right. You don't have the ability to take them to a daycare because everything's flooded. Happens. They're at home. Now what happens is, does Kevin go, oh, well, everything else goes out the window? No. You find a way to balance the change.
Dude, even holidays.
If
memory serves me, you and I were in the gym at Christmas morning, 5 a.m. Like, it doesn't, okay, it's a holiday. It doesn't change anything.
No. Okay, here's the thing is, that sounds extreme to everybody, right? So, oh, these guys, it was Christmas. Okay. Christmas is the same day as every other day. Right. Why did we train? We don't train at 5 a.m. Just everyone. There's days I'll go to the gym. There's days I'll go to the gym at 4 a.m. They don't happen as often as they used to because I don't have to, but if I have to, I will. Why did we go at 5 a.m. on Christmas Day? One, Kevin wanted to make sure he was there when his kids woke up so he could be there when they opened their presents. Right. So he made a sacrifice on that day to ensure that his kids he could be there for his kids to have a Christmas Day. They don't know he went to the gym. He's not going to walk. He doesn't walk in the house and go, hey, everybody, you must treat me differently because I went to the gym at 5. Doesn't matter. You did it. You made a sacrifice on your time and their time to make sure that you had balance in the rest of your life. This is what I want to endure in this episode. Regardless of what your first impression is, find a balance and understand that regardless of how people are going to judge you. Regardless. Even if you have balance, you are going to be judged. Be okay with the fact that you're going to be judged, but make sure that you are trying to be the best in all those different aspects. You want to be the best you can be. You're not comparing yourself to others. Be the best you can be in your physicality and nutrition to be as healthy and as capable as you can be in the present.
And you can't compare yourself to where someone else is.
No.
Like, your
starting point's different.
Right.
Then you want to have the second one, and you want to make sure that you start getting your spirituality and your faith in check. You want to make sure that if you're a Christian, you are getting closer to God and you're getting that because we all need it. We all need it, right? You want to sit down and you want to have those in-depth, deep meditation discussions with yourself. Another word for it is prayer, but you want to sit down and have those quiet moments where you reflect on life. You want to be grateful. You want to wake up and be grateful that you woke up. You want to be grateful for the people that love you in your life. Right? You want spirituality, mindset. You want to take those two aspects and you want to have a mindset that's solid so that you can have consistency. So that every day you go, I don't feel like going to the gym, but I'm going. I don't feel like waking up and being grateful because I had a shitty night's sleep, but I'm going to do it anyway. And you want to be consistent. You want to develop a bulletproof mindset that allows that consistency to keep that going. And then what happens is when you put those three in tune, abundance will come with it. That's the important part. And if you do that, confidence, all the good things come with it. Confidence, accountability, being present in the moment. Everything else kind of flourishes. Relationships, how people see you, how everything else around your life kind of works in the same tune. And you find a balance and you find an algorithm, a rhythm that just kind of flows in life, and then life becomes really beautiful and easy, and you really, I don't know if you experience this, but the colors are brighter, and the sun is shining brighter, and things are more beautiful, and things you wouldn't notice before.
I'll tell you one of the things that like gets me. I love living in Florida. Honestly, I love California, Arizona.
They're beautiful.
Probably not Texas, but the southern part of the U.S. When I can go outside and look up and see bright, shining skies, I have so much gratitude in those moments. I literally find myself just energized by a beautiful, hot summer day.
Dude,
I don't know why I'm like that, but I just have always loved it.
Amazing, but I find since I found more balance and being able to try and balance these things and being consciously aware that I have to.
Mm-hmm.
I take trips to Buffalo to go do work in Canada at least once a month, right? And I'd land in Buffalo, and it'd be middle of winter, it's snowing, it's horrible. I find beauty in it. Right? Because you find beauty in everything, right? I'm super blessed to live in my opinion, the greatest state and the greatest country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same breath, I find beauty in the places that previously, because I was so overly focused on the future, or so overly living in the past and not in the present, that I wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
Well, and I have really come to experience this again, where I've said to you, and maybe even on the podcast, I'm all about experiences these days. Like I'm and making memories, right? And for me, it's really important to just be in the moment of whatever that experience or memory is, and just like this past weekend, we just went to the outlet mall. And I was very much into that time. I just didn't really think or care about anything else, and
nothing else mattered.
Nothing else mattered. And in the past, Sam's a shopper, right? If she's shopping, it takes a while to pick the shirts, and it would get frustrating to me in the past, right? Where I would almost...
it's amazing how it doesn't anymore, right?
Yeah, I didn't care. And
I just enjoy the fact that you are with your other significant other. You're sitting there and you're enjoying the fact that they're having that time, and you're engaging. That is being
the kids were all over the place, right? I'm keeping them corralled, and it's busy, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and she's trying to decide which shirt she liked or this one, and I'm just like, hey. And I said I was more concerned about making sure she kept on her eating time than I was the time it was taking. And she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's taking so long." I'm like, I don't care about that. I care about you. Yeah, take as long as you want. I care about your eating schedule. That's what I'm trying to make sure of. She's like, "Oh, okay," which was a different thing for her, right? Because I was like, "Take your time. I don't care." I have everything I want.
Yeah,
I'm with my wife, my beautiful wife, and my kids, and we're out just enjoying life.
You're living life. You're living life to its fullest in that moment, and that's what I want to end off on today. Is your first impressions are important. They are, regardless of what anyone's going to tell you. I'm not going to sit here and try and bullshit you and tell everybody, no. It doesn't matter. It does matter, right? It also matters what energy you exude and how that energy is transferred. It's not just about that first impression of physical. That is going to make an impact. People are going to see it, regardless of what you believe, regardless of what people tell you. It creates an impact. But I will 100% guarantee you that if you find balance, right, with balance comes confidence, right, comes development, comes growth, comes a feeling of the world where your energy will override how people perceive you in that first impression if you have balance and you find that balance in all those important things in life.
I totally agree.
That's what really makes a difference. Find those mechanisms to find that balance. Find those four legs of that table and always keep everything upright. Make sure that water is always in the same place.
A final thought I'll share is that if I don't like myself because I'm out of shape and I'm overweight, it's hard for me to bring joy into every room I enter. It's hard for me to be happy and proud of the person I am.
Yeah.
So when I walk into a room, I want to bring joy and happiness
to everyone else.
And I can't do that if I don't put my personal health first.
And again, for those people who are, if you're on the overweight side and you want to be better, I'm gonna pose a question to Kevin, right? Because Kevin went through this. when you started the journey and you started taking control of what you were eating, right? Because it's not like you go to gym for the first week and you're in shape. It's not like you go to gym for the first 3 weeks, first month, first 3 months, first 6 months. It takes about 6 months before you start seeing the difference, right? Yeah. However, how long did you start that journey that you felt the difference?
How long until I felt the difference?
Right. So I'm trying to explain to people that yes, there will come the physical differences, and they are rewarding and they are good. But what's more important is the fact that you actually took the steps and you consistently took them. It was almost immediately that you actually, the minute you got into the routine, like I would say it would be weeks. The minute you're like, hey, I'm training every day, I'm eating, I'm doing the things. The minute you realize you were capable and you took the action consistently,
that's pretty cool.
It was almost immediate.
It was almost immediate. Well, but I was also thinking about it like this. Was the last Saturday that we didn't all hit a gym session?
Yeah, it's become a staple.
Yeah, and like we don't even ask each other what time. We just hit it.
We know.
Like, I guess like for me, it does take a little bit of time to where it's your DNA.
Yeah.
Right. I do think believing that it's your DNA.
Yeah.
But the changes mentally happen quick.
Yes.
Right. But there is a level for people, I think.
You've got to be consistent.
The consistency and the repetition, because motivation for me is the biggest. Yeah, motivation is the biggest setup of failure for anybody on their journey for fitness, because motivation is temporary.
It's waning.
It's very temporary, right? Because even now, like as motivated as I am now, I will still argue that motivation is temporary, even to where I am right now.
And the thing is what we're talking about is motivation from an external source is fleeting.
Yes,
right? I can watch a super motivating video and I'm pumped for the gym and go. And 5 minutes later, a bird flies by and then all of a sudden changes, right?
Yep.
What we're talking about is we're talking about self-motivation, which essentially can also be called discipline. When you are self-motivated on consistency and you're going, in Kevin's particular cases, right, and I'm using him as an example because he went through this not even longer, a year ago, right? It started with, hey, you're going to eat this way. You're going to train this way. You're going to do this, right? Coming into that first session and being a little bit, I don't really know what to expect, and coming out of the session going, fuck, I did that. And then going into the second session, I did it again. I'd say honestly, it was maybe about 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Within 2 to 4 weeks, your attitude towards exercise, taking control of what you ate, how you did it, where you did it,
shifted fast.
Mind shift was like this. Yes, the physical took time.
I will say, but before we ever met, like I did 75 hard.
Yeah.
I did things before we ever even met, in my opinion, to get me ready for you.
Yeah, you already took steps to be better, which I'd say anybody who is, if you're someone who's finding balance in other places, you're probably taking those steps. It's just, there will always be one of those steps or one of those 4 points of the stool that are going to be more difficult for others. Some people it's going to come easier, some it's going to come harder, right? The point is, you're probably taking steps, but you haven't flipped the switch. In your particular case, you took lots of steps, but there was a flip of the switch, which you found a mechanism that worked for you, but within a very short span of time, your mindset went like this and changed. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And
then everything snowballs.
Yes.
Like
and then it kind of just comes.
It just continues, and it gets better, and it gets better, and it gets better, and it gets better. And even today, like it just gets better, and it gets better. And the one thing that I'll say I've learned is how you speak your truth, especially with those around you that love you and care about you, specifically a spouse or parents.
Yeah.
How you speak your truth makes a difference too.
Yes.
Because sharing your truth is healing, but it also allows you to open up to what you're experiencing and what you're going through.
And be honest about it.
To help them receive it, right?
Yeah.
But I always meet it with like, listen, I'm sharing my truth. I'm not angry. I just want you to be aware.
Yes.
X, Y, Z, whatever's going on. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
In not giving anger towards whatever that situation is.
100%. And what I want to get through to, whether you're the athlete looking for the other stages of balance, or you're the person who's overweight and wants to find the physical ways to control what you eat and get into shape. What I'm saying is, you won't see it, but if you've done it and you're consistent and you flip that switch in your mind, trust me, the physical changes will come. Trust me. However, you are going to feel it almost immediately if you are consistent.
Yeah, and I don't want to continue the episode too much longer, but I think a really important thing for former athletes and military personnel, all of a sudden your sport gets, or your profession gets taken from you.
Your purpose.
And that's your purpose, right? Yeah. And I went through this. Like, I felt like for like 15 years I was this like misplaced. I used to say it even. I'm a misplaced baseball guy.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was going to go coach when I was done. That didn't work out financially. It was just not an option because they just don't make money as coaches in the beginning, especially in baseball. And I was like this misplaced guy. Like all my identity and purpose was in baseball, and nothing of baseball went how I hoped or planned. So now what? Like, what do I do?
What do I do now?
I associated like pain around the sport itself. I just didn't. I was angry at it. And then fitness, I just always associated with punishment. And I was like, what do I do? And like, I had to really, truly rewire my brain.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think for athletes, what's important is like reset your mindset around fitness.
Yeah.
Change the mindset around what your identity is. And then again, getting into this journey and finding healing through these tools that we talk about on the podcast. It'll only get better each and every day, but you have to stay consistent. You have to keep pressing forward. You cannot give up.
And you cannot get stuck in a belief system that up until this point is if you need this balance and you don't have it, whatever your belief system is, you have to change that. You cannot get stuck. You know, you talk about athletes or military. If you're an athlete, you are not your sport.
That's
it's just something you've done.
That's right.
If you've been in the military, you are not the military. It doesn't define who you are.
It's just
part of who. It's part of who you are.
It's a part of your story.
It's part of your story, but it's not who you are. Your journey. Your journey is evolving. It's changing. It's readapting. It's the world ahead of you is brand new. It's not behind you. It's ahead of you. It's ahead.
In the last thought, I know we said that 3 times, but like on my right arm, the sleeve that I'm working on is all dedicated to military and patriotism stuff because it's a part of my story.
Yes.
It's not who I am.
No.
But it's a part of my story that I want to share. And I want to have art on my body that's important to me to actually show my story. And I'm going to do the same on my left arm because it's a representation of my story.
Yes.
It's not who I am.
Yeah. And I think that's an important place to end off with is your story's not done.
That's right.
The best is still ahead if you're willing to take the steps.
Yeah.
The best is still to come.
That's right. Good episode. Thanks for listening.